and the message we try to get across to negotiators very clearly, especially now, since they have all, in fact, 192 countries signed up to this 2-degree target, that all of the science says that if we are to have any chance of meeting that 2-degree target, then the immediate thing we have to do is to make sure global emissions peak and begin to decline before the end of this decade. Now, if you want that to happen, you have to look at the power sector. It's about 40% of energy-related CO2 emissions in the power sector, about 25% of overall greenhouse gas emissions. And if you want to change that between now and 2020, there's really not a lot you can do if you want to change it in a big way. You can make big changes, but only basically through 3 areas. One is efficiency, of course. Efficiency will always be the best and the easiest and the cheapest way to reduce emissions. You can make some gains from switching from coal to gas, but that's a complicated question these days for all sorts of market-related reasons. But the main thing you can do on the supply side, of course, is boost the build of renewables, because you can actually make a big difference in the quantity of renewables that we deploy between now and 2020. Whereas if you talk about other technologies, then the timeframes really don't allow you to make any difference in there. And wind energy, of course, is the very fast to deploy, and in an increasing number of markets, the cheapest way to add new capacity to the grid. That is the case in Brazil. That is the case in Mexico. That is the case in South Africa. It is the case in the United States, or at least it was in 2013. Cheaper than oil, coal, gas, nuclear, anything else, and you can get it onto the market very quickly.
We are trying from the industrialized world, even though we sometimes do not have our own house in order, we are trying to persuade the rest of the world to take measures on climate change. And this is going to lead up to COP21 in Paris, and hopefully you will have an agreement. Now, of course, the countries, the new economies who are supposed to take measures, they see these climate change, let's say, imposements on their economies as a threat. They see it as a threat that would hamper their economic growth. And of course, renewable energy, and especially wind, is one of the very obvious solutions to that threat. Trying to show the developing economies, I mean the stronger of the developing economies, that actually in our countries, in some of them at least here in Europe, we can have economic growth without having growth in energy consumption. We can decouple energy consumption and CO2 emission from economic growth.
Especially for developing countries, the economic effects, not only by electricity prices, but also by job creation, is of highest importance. And here, our industry can provide a lot, because many of the components of the equipment of a wind project that gets installed in any country in the world comes from the domestic market. It doesn't always require a huge factory, but to give you an example, a typical wind farm that we currently install even in a country like Canada has 40% local share, and this can be easily increased by doing more locally. So you can combine the advantageous effect of low cost of energy with the job creation that you have locally, and therefore you can, we as an industry can contribute to the economic development of all countries. When it comes to climate negotiations, of course, we have one high expectation. The development of one generation of wind turbines is at least a 20, if not a 50 million euro investment. It's far more expensive to develop a generation of wind turbines than to put up a factory. And for that, in order to be sure that it makes sense to do that investment, we need stability. And stability, I don't mean that on a micro level, that each country has to provide maximum stability and mechanisms for the next 20 years. But at least on a global, or at least I would say continental level, one needs to be sure that that the demand for wind power is there on a continuous basis.
Quel rôle peut jouer l'éolien dans les négociations climatiques ? Et là, je vais rejoindre ce qu'ont dit mes collègues à côté. Il est majeur. Il est majeur. Il est essentiel. Pourquoi ? Parce que si on regarde l'étranger, je vais juste citer un chiffre. On parle de 2020, mais allons un tout petit peu plus loin. La demande électrique mondiale d'ici 2030, tout pays confondu, on va être face à une augmentation de la demande de 50%. Je ne sais pas si vous vous rendez compte de ce que ça représente, 50% de besoins supplémentaires, justement, pour l'Afrique, pour l'Asie, pour tous ces pays qui ont un modèle différent et qui n'ont pas aujourd'hui forcément accès à l'énergie comme nous avons accès. Plus 50%, c'est demain. C'est 15 ans. Qu'est-ce qu'on peut faire en 15 ans pour augmenter les moyens de production pour répondre à cette demande ? À part les énergies renouvelables, je vais être franc avec vous, je ne vois pas. Très honnêtement, je ne vois pas.
Dans beaucoup de pays, l'énergie renouvelable est économiquement compétitive. Et c'est grâce à ça, effectivement, que l'énergie renouvelable et l'éolien se positionnera dans cette problématique de changement climatique. Comme Eric le disait, il est clair que dans beaucoup de pays, le coût du kilowattheure, quand il est là, et il n'est pas toujours là, est extrêmement élevé. Le renouvelable, ça peut être dans ces pays 15, 10 centimes d'euros, 15 centimes, 20 centimes d'euros, suivant la complexité. Mais dans tous les cas, ça permet de faire baisser la facture énergétique. Alors, l'avantage des systèmes hybrides qui permettent de plugger, comme une souris en informatique, de plugger du renouvelable sur du thermique existant, ça va permettre globalement de faire baisser le coût du mixte énergétique et d'accompagner la demande croissante d'énergie par cet apport de renouvelables.